Hey there guys, and welcome to the video. One of the things I get asked quite a lot is how can we use ChatGPT to improve our learning in Python? I generally think there's three ways we can use it as like an assistance tool. I don't think it's the be all and end all yet, I should say, but there are three really cool things ChatGPT can help with, especially if you're starting off your Python journey. And those are, one, it can explain code pretty well. The second is going to be how it can write code. And the third one is going to be how it can be used to improve our code. Now, of course, there are caveats and kind of like things to be aware of for each of these, but throughout the course of this video, I want to go through each of these three things and show how ChatGPT can be used. Enjoy the video, guys, and let's jump straight in. The first one on our list is using it to explain bits of code that have been already written. So for this example, I've got this is actually taken from LeetCode. It's an easy question called defang IP address. The idea being that you're given an IP address like this, and it asks you to replace each of these periods with basically a square bracket, a period like that. So you can do this using str.replace, but I've done it in a bit more of a convoluted way, just to show you what ChatGPT will do with it. And it's as simple as copy and pasting it, going to ChatGPT and putting it in like this. So let's see what ChatGPT makes of this. And there we have it. So what it's doing in this case here, which I think is pretty useful, is that it does it. You always find ChatGPT tends to do this. It tends to kind of do things in kind of bullets or these numbered lists, which is pretty good. But in this case here, I think it'd be really cool to take this bit. So generally when I've asked it to explain stuff, it's done it in this kind of numbered way. So what I would do personally, I would copy this here, bring it back in, and let's put this in some comments like this here. Now, this is all well and good getting to this point here, and I think the first caveat you need to be aware of is don't just copy and paste the response and take it as that's it, that's all done. It's a bit like kind of copying homework. Like, you technically have the answer, but do you really understand it? So the first thing I would do, especially if you're learning Python, is have a go at rewriting these yourselves here. You tend to find that if you tend to write something yourself, it's more likely to stick than if it's just something that you've read. So by all means, feel free to copy in some code, ask ChatGPT to go and explain it, but then when you then get back the response, make sure that you then take the time to write out yourself. So write out what's happening in each line here. What you then could do, this is something I like to do as well, is then have a go at kind of pairing up these lines with each of these things here. So say, for example, if I was to take one of these, let's put this here. There we go. And what I would then do is then try and write this out myself to something that's a bit more appropriate. So yeah, so just to recap for this step, you can simply copy and paste code over to ChatGPT, but the main thing to be aware of here is that whenever you get your response back, make sure you have a go at rewriting it out yourself into your own words. That way, its response is really going to stick, and of course, it's going to be a lot more beneficial in the long run if you're writing it out yourself. Just another thing to be aware of as well, of course, this is in terms of how this is trained. This is trained off by giving it hundreds of thousands of millions of bits of code to write. So this is only ever as good as the code that it's been given to be trained with in the first place. So just make sure that when you are going through, make sure you read this and make sure that it does make sense. It's never ever going to be 100% all the time. So just be aware of that as you're doing this. But yeah, it's a really great way to benefit your learning. Now, the second one on our list is using it to write code, which I think is arguably the most controversial. You get all these people saying that, ChatGPT comes along, it can come along and pinch everyone's jobs. I don't think that's necessarily true yet, but still, it's a really powerful tool and something that we should definitely take advantage of, especially as ChatGPT at the moment. It's free. It's something that we can just go on and have a look at. So the way I would do this, I think if I was doing it to learn Python, is I would ask it to do stuff, and I would then rewrite the code for myself. So in this example here, let's say, for example, we want to open a file and read the contents to screen. So in general, I would say in Python, show me how to open a file, and let's say, and read the contents, let's say into a list. This can be anything, but I'm going to ask it to do this here. Generally what it will do, it will give me some kind of some text around it, and it will then give me the code here as well underneath. What is pretty neat as well is it will just give you this copy code section as well. So let's go ahead and take this, head back into VS Code and paste this in. Okay, and this is the code that ChatGPT has given us. Now, one of the first things I would do, which I think it's actually quite nice that it does this, it generally kind of gives you these fairly usable comments. Now, it's up to you whether you keep these in. Maybe if you're learning Python, I would probably keep this in here. But if I was trying to use this as a learning tool, I would be tempted to rewrite this from scratch. So in this case here, what I would probably do, I would probably have this to one side, and I would basically create a new function, but maybe call it something different, just so that I actually get the practice of physically writing a function here. So let's make some space. I'm going to remove the comments just for the time being. Let's bunch this up here. I can already see one place where this could be made more efficient. If I look at this section here, this return lines, we do return lines and then we define it here. So why don't we just take this and put this there like that instead? That way it's going to cut us down on our line count. Return this here. What else could we do to improve this? We also define lines equal file.readlines here. Let me use it there. So why don't we actually just get rid of that as well? Let's grab this and put this in there. So that could be made a bit more interesting as well, doing that as a one line just like this. And let's see what else it's done. So it's done a file not found error and an accept IO error here. Now, if you're new to Python, you may not be aware of these. So this might be a good learning point to kind of go off and research these, figure out what they do, and then write down what happens. So in this case here, this one's fairly straightforward. This is then raised, if for whatever reason the file path that we pass into the function doesn't exist. This one is it's a bit more rare. I don't really tend to come across this too much. This would be maybe if you had some kind of like permission error, or if for some reason or for whatever reason Python was unable to open the file. It's different to this one. This is simply like if the file isn't there. This one is if there is some issue reading the file, but the file is still there here. So to summarize for this one, I would generally have a go at giving it some kind of prompt. So you pass in, something like this, but then whenever the function then comes back in, I would have a go at generally trying to modify the response just so that in some way I'm interacting with the code here, or I would try rewriting that function from scratch. So at least I'm writing code on top of this response. I'm not just saying, take this and run, there's my code, because that way you haven't learned anything here. Where if we look at this one, you may have the chance to learn about these two errors. What else do we have with a list comprehension? We could use that as a stimulus to go off and have a look at. We've got with open file path as R, so you may not have seen R before. We can open files in R, A, W, there's loads of different modes we can use. So I might choose to go off and learn about this here. But in general, just be really curious, try and be really kind of, try and interrogate this code as much as you can, just so that when you get this free response back from ChatGPT, we're not just using it and saying the job is done. We're using it as a tool to kind of benefit and further our learning by modifying and interacting with the code that we get back. So the last one on our list is using it to improve some code. What I've done, I've thrown together some not very good code, but basically the idea of this is I've got a folder called stuff here. Inside this, I've got two sort of txt files. I've got a mock kind of CSV file. And the idea is I'm going to enumerate through this directory and say if the file we're looking at ends with extension, so if the file is a text file, then in a dictionary, put in some index. In this case, so this is enumerating through it. It's going to go 0, 1, 2, so go through. So we're going to have a dictionary with numbers for keys, and those corresponding keys are going to have the path to that file, or just the file name. Once it's done, we're then going to say for each key and value in the dictionary, just print off an F string with the key and the value. Now what we can do is give this to ChatGPT and ask it to try and improve it in certain ways. This one I think is probably the most trivial, so let me show you an example. So if I say improve this, let's see what we get. Okay, so I can see straight away it's gone for pathlib, which is a great idea. So let's remove this sidebar, put this in the middle, and what we've got here is something quite interesting. So I'm going to copy this, bring this back into here. I just want to separate this here with a line of comments. Now we can see, looking at it, it's pretty good. I like the fact that it's gone for this list comprehension. That's really nice and declarative, and it's quite functional. I really quite like that. The only thing I'd probably do to make this a bit nicer is if this was ever hard-coded, I'd probably just put that in here and save myself a line just like that. Make sure I close that off there. So that's pretty good. I can see straight away it's gone for pathlib. Pathlib is generally more preferable to OS here. This is kind of like platform agnostic, so if you're using this on like Linux or Windows, Pathlib's fine. It can be pretty happy, where things like OS, can be kind of funny about the forward and the backslashes. So generally, yeah, I think that's a really good shout. Going for Pathlib, I would do that in the industry. That's pretty good. What have we done here? So we're saying for each file in, so path, this creates a path object from this iter directory that returns an iterable, which allows us to iterate over those files. And then we're using dot suffix. In this case, say this is accessing the attribute, the file, or the suffix attribute of each file there. So this bit's kind of similar to this here. That's a bit shorter. I think this looks a little bit cleaner. So in general, that's a pretty good effort. Let's go ahead and hit run. There we go. We get exactly the same output, which is pretty cool. Now, in terms of using this to benefit your learning, now, suppose this is the first time you've seen this, you've never seen Pathlib before, I would take that as a great opportunity to go and learn about what Pathlib does and what it actually means. So let's go back here as well. One thing we can do is we can pinch this, copy this, and then put these as your comments for this bit of code as well. Let's make sure we separate these out. Here we go. So what's it told us? We've imported path from Pathlib to work with file paths in a more modern and convenient way. Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. In this case, we've used a list comprehension to directly filter the files. So directly filtering them means we're using this bit at the end here. But using list comprehension, that's a fantastic idea. Using a dictionary instead, yeah, marginal. I think you could use a dictionary, or benefit of a dictionary is that it's, if you were looking up things by their indices, or looking up by their key. Looking up a key from a dictionary is much faster than looking up an index from a list. So yeah, sort of, I kind of agree with that one. And then what have we done here? We've avoided using a separate dictionary for storing the file index and name, as is not necessary. Yeah, that's a pretty good shout. And then we've done file.name to get the file name from the full path, which is simpler and cleaner. Yeah, I'd agree with that. That's a little bit shorter, I suppose. And again, we're using an attribute rather than calling a method on something, which is, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So suppose if I was using this for the first time, I would be wanting to use this as a learning point. So I would want to go off and ask myself, well, first of all, what is Pathlib? I'd want to be asking myself, why Pathlib over OS? What else have we got here as well? We have some functional programming. We've got this list comprehension. So I'd want to then ask myself, let's see, helps if I probably spell it right. Let's see, what is functional programming and why is it better? So in a sense, we're using it to improve our code, but we're also using it as a basis to ask questions and really try and improve our knowledge. You find as a programmer, you always want to be learning and figuring out better ways of doing things here. So rather than just saying improve it, really dig into why are these improvements better than what I've done? Why is Pathlib better than OS? Why is this list comprehension better than creating a dictionary? So just something to be aware of. Especially if you're a programmer, you're probably quite inquisitively minded anyway, so you might be asking these questions anyway. But yeah, just really reinforce it. When you get this code back, really interrogate it as much as you possibly can. And that's the last one for that, really. So just to recap, in this session, we've looked at how to explain code, how to write code, and also how to improve code. And those are kind of like those are basically my top 3 ways upon which we can use ChatGPT to enhance our learning. Again, the final caveat, as we said it earlier, this is only as good as the data it's gotten. We don't really know where that data has come from. So of course, take everything with a pinch of salt. If something looks a bit funny or a bit suspicious, try and look for that information somewhere else as well. This isn't the be all and end all, but whilst it's here, it's a great tool, so we may as well use it. Cheers for watching, guys. And if this has been helpful, feel free to like, subscribe, whatever. That'll be awesome. And have a great weekend. Thank you.